and I heard this terrible roaring, and I said, "Oh, what is that?" And as it got closer, you know, it was terrible. And I was holding my ears like this. I said, "Oh, what is that?" And I looked, and there I saw it, the nose of that plane coming right at me.
And it was real low to the ground at that point, or?
Yeah. To me, the way it looked to me, it was going to head right for me. It was coming right at me.
Wow. Mm-hmm. And did you see, at that point, did you see any other plane?
At that point, no. After the plane had crashed, which I didn't know it crashed at the time, but I knew it went over the house, over me, and it nipped the top of the tree. And they told me that was like 100 feet.
Where, at your property?
Yeah. And it nipped that tree, top of that tree, and then it just disappeared. And then all of a sudden, the roaring had stopped. There was no sound, no birds, no nothing. It was so deathly still. And then I heard somebody say, "Oh my God!" Like that, and it just sort of faded off. And I looked at my sister and I said, "Where did that come from?" It was almost like it appeared out of the air somewhere. And just real still, and then those words, and then there was like, it was muffled to me like a sonic, and I looked, something caught my eye, and here was a white plane, and it was coming from the crash site area. And they asked me to be an ambassador up there, and I refused. I said no, because I didn't go along with the stories.
Yeah.
They weren't telling the right things.
Okay, welcome back to Think or Be Eaten. Think or Be Eaten. It's new for me yet, Dom. But anyway, Dominic DiMaggio is with us. He was with us before in the days of Beyond the Grassy Knoll, and now he's with us with Think or Be Eaten. And we're going to talk about Flight 93, which seems to me, I'll ask Dom what he thinks, is probably the least talked about event on that ominous day. And I'm wondering if there's a lot of reasons for that. Maybe we'll find out today, maybe we won't. But I wanted to pick up with Dominic because it's been some time since he last was on. He's come out with a new video bite, and probably we'll use that as a bit of a springboard. But Dominic, thanks a lot for coming back. And when did you go out last that yielded that video that's up there on YouTube now?
The last time I went out was, I just went out in September. And that's when I tracked down Viola Saylor.
That was September, okay.
And actually, I went out and filmed the interview a month later. Like, I talked to her. It was on the anniversary of the attack. And she was pretty emotional that day, and she didn't really want to do it that day, but she gave me her number and was like, look, if you want to come back, because she's like, I sent her a video of Susan McElwain beforehand, so she had a chance to see that. She's like, I know that if I talk to you, that you're not going to, like, you're going to tell my story. You're not going to edit it and cut it and all this and that, so... She's like, here's my number, call me, and let's do it again. And a month later, I was out there, and we did it.
All right. I tell you what, why don't we talk a little bit about that, and then let's go back in time to talk about all that you have done. And let's say this, it's your intention, whenever you can, and whenever this might have an end, if ever it does, that the videos that you have put up on YouTube might someday be strung along together to create a documentary.
Yeah, I plan on hopefully at some point doing a long-form presentation because a lot of people still, like, when they see this, they still come back with a lot of the old questions, and it's just stuff to me that's old to me, but like
right.
a lot of people, like you said, Shanksville is one of the least looked into areas, and I think there's a very good reason for that. But so there's still a lot of people that have questions that have been answered a year ago that don't know. You know what I mean? So hopefully at some point there will be a long form that'll cover everything.
All right, and also we'll tell you at this time, while you're listening to this audio, whether you've downloaded or just listening to it on play, there'll be links that will connect to two JPEGs of geographic segmentations of the area in and around Shanksville. One of them will be called Marina, which gives you a proximity of the crash site, not the town of Shanksville, because the crash site happened outside there. So it'll give you a proximity of the crash site to the Indian Lake Marina. The second one will give you an idea of where the crash site is, where the Indian Lake Marina is, and where New Baltimore is, which is another wild card in this whole deck. So, folks, it'll all be there. If you're listening to this, all those links are in front of you, and you'll have no problem with that. And whatever you need to avail yourself of, Dominic has provided it, or we provided it as best we can, so you guys get an idea of the lay of the land and exactly what might be possible, or might have been possible that day. So let's look at that last video that you released, or the one at least I got an email about, which I checked out, and hence was the genesis for my getting in contact with you again. We see Viola and Susan McElwain once again. What was your focus as far as that last video?
I would say the focus would have to be Indian Lake, because for the longest time that I've been looking into this, it's always been the anomaly that I hadn't been able to figure out how it fit in, how this piece went into the puzzle. It was all these accounts of Indian Lake and people hearing something fly, and for the longest time, because there were so many reports that people heard something over Indian Lake, I thought that the flight path had been faked and that the plane had approached over Indian Lake and that there was a cover-up of a shoot-down, because that was the only explanation I could come up with. But after I started talking to witnesses who started describing, seeing the commercial airliner coming from the northeast, crossing Route 30 and heading towards the crash site, it became obvious that the only way that anybody in Indian Lake could ever have heard the plane was for it not to crash there but continue flying, because this would be like a straight line, would shoot right over there. And another piece of the puzzle was in Loose Change Final Cut, there's an interview with the Indian Lake Mayor, Barry Litchty. And in it, it's only there for a couple brief seconds. He's talking about the account in that day and what happened. He's saying how the lights had gone out, flickered and that. And he said that he heard something come over the house, his house, which sounded like a missile, he described it as. But he said it was coming from the crash site direction.
And yet that can't be. Well, I don't know.
I mean, the only way it could be is if it's a plane flying at a low altitude or cruising over this area, coming from that direction. I mean, the witnesses who were north and northeast of it, or northwest of the crash site there, all seen the plane heading in that direction. And see, one thing to understand, and a lot of people can't get looking at maps and that until you're there, is this whole area of southern Pennsylvania is just all hills and mountains and trees.
Yep.
And it's real easy for, like, a lot of the accounts are like, oh, I seen it crash into trees, or I seen it disappear behind a tree line.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. Is it's the layout. The plane descended, and it's blocked, and then like a minute later, they see an explosion and go, oh, it must have crashed.
Yeah, I'm going no only because really, and we can talk about the veracity of a number of eyewitnesses' accounts, but as I look back again, as you know, I mean, I still have with me the accounts that appeared in major dailies, including the New York Times, Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, of course. And really, nobody saw the plane impact. They lost sight of it, and then later on, whether it's seconds or whatever, now you have a sound, a rumble, and I guess what we could all admit was a mushroom cloud come up. Is that right?
Yeah, correct.